In these videos, we'll try and help you get a better understanding of your brain. We will look at its basic components and its physiology. We'll also explore how the brain can also sometimes have its problems. This series will focus on teaching the basic elements of neuroscience, and then using this knowledge to explore more deeply the normal and pathological brain. Things like neurological and psychiatric problems, for instance. Talking about the physiology of addiction and how it works. But before we delve into those topics, it is vital to understand how the brain functions. And so today, we're going to look at the parts of its sum. The neuron. Now, neurons love to communicate. They put all their energies to build networks. They talk with themselves, with other neurons, with the rest of our body, and most importantly, they help us perceive the world and the universe. Neurons give us our ability to sense, smell, taste, touch, see, hear, to think and to remember. They allow our organs and muscles to move and even our hearts to beat. Without neurons, none of our vital functions can work. With neurons, we're ready to seize the world and are connected. Now let's look at the basic structure of a typical neuron. The main function of a neuron is to communicate, and it does so electrically or chemically. Electrically to go fast and far, chemically for jumping from neuron to neuron. Electrical signals are simple and binary, yes or no, and chemical signals are slower but more complex, to say different things. Understanding these two methods of communication in neurons is key to understanding the brain. So let's begin with electrical. The electrical signal starts at the dendrites of the neuron, these little guys over here. Dendrites help connect the massive network of neurons all around your body and brain and form lots of little connections with lots of other neurons. When the dendrites of a neuron get excited enough, an electrical current called an action potential gets passed on through the cell. The current goes through the soma of the neuron, this little guy over here, where the neuron itself decides whether to pass on the signal, saying yes, cancel the signal, saying no, or a perhaps signal. But we'll get into more detail about that later. Let's say our neuron over here gave the yes and let the action potential roll through. The current then travels down the axon of the neuron all the way down to its tip, known as the terminal, or nerve ending. Now, axons have multiple terminals connected to lots of other neurons, so let's have a look at how a terminal works. A terminal forms a gap between itself and the dendrites of another neuron. This gap is called a synapse. This is where the chemical part of messaging begins. When the action potential gets to the terminal, the message is translated chemically to other neurons. These chemicals are called neurotransmitters, and there's a whole bunch of them. When a terminal gets excited from the electrical impulse, it floods the synapse with these neurotransmitters. Now, it gets a little more complicated with neurotransmitters, so let's break them down into three categories. Let's say neurotransmitters can say three things: yes, no, and perhaps. Now, it's obviously much more complicated, but this is a simple way of looking at it. The excitatory signal, yes, is called glutamate. The inhibitory signal, no, is called GABA. The modulatory signal, perhaps, are dopamine, serotonin, or acetylcholine, to name a few. These neurotransmitters are stored in vesicles, called synaptic vesicles, inside the terminal. When the electrical signal reaches the terminal, these vesicles fuse with the membrane of the terminal, and their content is poured into the synapse. When the neurotransmitters have done a good job exciting their friendly dendrite, they get vacuumed back into the terminal through reuptake sites, then stored in synaptic vesicles, ready to do it all over again. Neurons are really cool, and understanding them is key to understanding the brain. But we want to go deeper and talk about how understanding neuroscience can help us understand our own behaviors and psychology. How things like addiction can be demystified so that we understand ourselves better, and wherein lies our true motivation for living life. So thank you very much for listening and supporting us. We hope to bring you more knowledge and videos very soon.